Several countries in Europe have agreed to take in tens of thousands of refugees from Afghanistan. At the same time, Turkey is literally building a wall on the border to stop the refugees from coming into the country, and almost all of the neighboring countries have shut down their borders. Saudi Arabia, who could easily help out the Afghan people, have banned immigration as well. The point here, Europe is about to take in what could easily be the biggest refugee wave ever. So the question is, are we more ready now than we were in 2015 with Syria? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Welcome to the channel, guys. So the story I have for you today is really a mixed bag of good and bad things happening. By now we all know that Afghanistan is essentially one big mess, but we have reports coming out of 30,000 Afghans leaving the country every single day. And the numbers keep escalating. So Europe is trying to scramble to get ready for this inevitable surge of migrants coming into the continent. But the problem is that since we handled the last crisis, migrant crisis with Syria, so poorly, Europe is now divided on how to handle this one. This article describes really well the difference in countries of Europe right now. So check this out. Expected Afghan influx reopens divisions over refugees in Europe. Concerns come as Albania and Kosovo accept US request to temporarily host political refugees. So the US has agreed to take in 30,000 political refugees, right? Most of those people can expect to right now be going to Albania and Kosovo, at least for the time being, until the US can find a safe way to transport them to the United States. Now, this is very generous of Kosovo and Albania, but those are small countries. Taking in a lot of migrants can cause a lot of problem. But it's a symbol of some of the countries in Europe being like the most generous. But most countries in Europe are not as, let's say, generous as Albania and Kosovo. So I think that the Italian Prime Minister made a statement that actually reflects by far the vast majority of countries in Europe right now. Mario Draghi, the Prime Minister of Italy, said on Monday that Italy is committed to protecting Afghan citizens who have collaborated with our mission, and the country is working with the European partners for a solution to the crisis which protects human rights, especially for women. So he's not like virtue signaling. He's not saying this because he's like it's like special rights for women. He's saying this because he's very well aware of what happened just a few years ago with the last migrant crisis, where Europe was taking in around 85% military-aged men. So that's why he's making this statement, right? He's not saying it because he wants to be like virtue signaling, like let's give extra special human rights to women. He's saying it because he's indirectly saying, listen, last time we took in 85% men, military-aged men. Now, if we do it this time around, let's find a solution where we can bring in a more nuanced picture of people, right? Like a more balanced picture instead of just men. Anyway, so this is the stance of most European countries, that we want to take in our nationals first, and then after that we take in whatever refugees and migrants each country feel like they can handle. But interestingly, more and more countries are beginning to be completely opposed to the idea of taking in any refugees at all. Actually, there's a lot of countries who still, up until a few days ago, wanted to deport even Afghan citizens back to Afghanistan, right? So Austria is one of these countries, and Austria didn't used to, like in the last migrant crisis, Austria took in a lot of refugees from Syria, and they took in, I would say, too many, and now that's beginning to be reflected in the polls. So Austria is one of these nations where they are still deporting Afghan citizens, and they have flat out rejected to take in any migrants from Afghanistan, right? So this is in German, but it just says that in spite of the advance of the Taliban, 90% of Austrians still want them to be deported. So Austria is refusing to take in all of these refugees and migrants, not because they're like a nation filled with bigots that just hate immigrants, but because they actually took in too many migrants in 2015 from Syria, and they then suffered the consequences over the next few years. So now they're making this decision that in some people's eyes look pretty radical. But I'm telling you, this sentiment is spreading all across Europe. And this time around, Europe is going to be much tougher in general on immigration and refugees than they were the last time around. The last time around, Italy and Greece were countries that almost had their economies shattered from taking in as many Syrians as they did, right? So imagine, if you think it's pretty radical what's happening across Europe and with Austria and so on, imagine what will happen with these nations if you force them to take in another huge wave of migrants that's even bigger than the last time. So the problem here is that I don't think it'll matter what kind of sentiment, if you have a tough stance on immigrants. I think this is coming, and I think it's inevitable, as this Politico article talks about. I read an interesting bit about it from down here, and it says, since 2015, the European Union has developed a new securitized approach to its eastern borders. So they learned from the last mistake with the migrant crisis in 2015. Fences have gone up almost everywhere, and even drones are increasingly used for surveillance. In February last year, Greek security forces impressed on the world that they were willing to do almost anything to keep refugees away. But will this approach work in the coming months? So that's a good question, right? The truth is, it did not really work before either. When the pandemic hit, refugee flows stopped for a while, but they were bound to return, and with renewed force. A diplomat in Kabul tells me as we sip tea in his garden, when the numbers are high enough, nothing can stop them, not even tanks. A second diplomat he speaks to tells him that this will eventually make its way to Europe, and then we might see one government fall, and then another, and then another. I'm telling you guys, this is not that big of an issue right now, and it's weird because you're not seeing the European Union scramble to make like really good decisions and prepare for this, almost as if they don't expect it. But I'm telling you, there could be millions, and this is not just exaggeration for the effect of it. There could be literally millions of Afghans coming to Europe before too long. Afghanistan is almost twice the size of Syria, so it's not unreasonable to make these estimations of potentially millions of people moving their way towards Europe, right? You can't count on the neighbors or even Saudi Arabia to step up and help out these refugees. Like in 2015, Saudi Arabia was supposed to help out, but they closed down their borders just like they have this time, by the way. So the road for an Afghan refugee to Saudi Arabia is obviously much shorter than to get to Europe, let's say through Turkey, right? But they won't do it, and they won't be able to. It might not even be because they don't want to, but they won't be able to. So they're going to most likely move through Iran and then go to Turkey, right? So Turkey right now is building a literal wall. They're erecting a literal wall of like 260 kilometers on the border with Iran to specifically stop these Afghan migrants, because they understand that we can't have another incident like what happened in 2015, where not all, but most of the Syrians would walk through Turkey to get to Europe. They understand that this is most likely going to happen again unless they stop it. So what are we supposed to do? Because most people feel sympathy for these refugees, and most people want to help out in some way. I think in many ways, like, it's our as in the West, failed mission in Afghanistan that has caused the whole country to become almost the first genuine terrorist organization-led nation in the world. It's pretty crazy, right? So you feel a need to help out these people. And I'm reading some comments of people saying online that the Taliban isn't that bad, that it's basically going to be an organization that takes over the government, and it might be a little bit more dictatorish than the last president of Afghanistan. But that's not what I'm reading from like news articles and reports. It looks like the Taliban is mercilessly hunting down people that oppose them. And I just think that they're a genuine terrorist organization. that we now have to see as like a government, like a full-on nation of the world. Obviously, it's not the people of Afghanistan and so on, but the government will be the first, as far as I know, the first terrorist organization ruling a government like this. You know, in some way, I think that the way that Albania and Kosovo are helping the US, I think it's a good symbol of how all of this is playing out all of the time. The US mainly, right? They, not the soldiers and not the people of the US, because they just follow orders, but these war-hungry politicians in Washington, they send these people into wars and they destroy one nation after another. And when they leave, just like with Afghanistan, they leave them worse than when they came in. And they keep doing it, they keep repeating the same thing. But I feel like the whole Albania, Kosovo taking in the refugees that the US are supposed to take in, I feel like that's a good symbol of what's been going on for the last 20, 25 years in the Middle East, that the US, under the order of these nasty politicians, they come in, they wreck a country, and then all of these refugees are forced to leave their homes and their families in many cases, and they go and they get pushed on Europe. Most of the time they get pushed on Europe, right? I don't understand why Europe isn't standing up to the, I mean, in the end, what can you do? But standing up to these US politicians and saying, look, you keep repeating this, you keep doing this over and over again. I understand that that Europe, the UK, France, even Denmark are sending people to aid these Americans in the constant wars in the Middle East. I understand that we take part of it, but by far it's the US military that's ordered to devastate all of these nations. And it keeps, we keep getting these waves of migrants as a result, as a consequence of these wars. And I don't get why no one's saying anything. No one's standing up to the politicians in Washington. How about next time they come up with an idea to nuke or to attack, not that's an exaggeration, but to attack Iran for some reason that no one can really explain, right? How about the next time they begin to bring up that idea, that we talk with them and we say, look, we're not going to have it. At the very least, we're not going to participate. We're not going to send our own troops to aid your insane, endless wars in the Middle East that doesn't do anything outside of maybe giving you some oil and stuff. So we want to help people, right? But I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't think that there's a real terrorist threat from taking in this group of people. Just imagine that you're from Afghanistan, right? Your country gets bombed for like 10, 15 years, then it gets occupied as well on top of that. If you don't think that that's going to radicalize a few young men, then we're just being too naive, right? So my hope is that we can somehow control the people who this time around come into Europe, so that if we take in any refugees, even if we take in any, right, in many ways that's a good thing. But if we take in any, we need to control who comes in, because some of these people, a percentage of it, and I don't know how big it is, but that there is a percentage of it that's going to be radicalized. And if we don't open our eyes to that, we're going to see attacks happening in Europe again, just like it did like 5-6 years ago. Like 5-6 years ago, it stopped, right? Almost ended. We had a few in France and so on, but it almost ended. But outside of that, I expect that if we take these people in just by the tens of thousands, I expect that we will be seeing terrorist attacks. It's just a matter of math. So I just think that the statement from the Italian Prime Minister Mario, I think he made a good point, that we want to help people and find a good solution to helping these people. But when we take migrants in, if we take them in, I want us to know who they are as best as we can. But more importantly, as Mario said, I don't want it to be all 85% again military aged men. I want it to be women and kids and families, people that are genuinely just fleeing war, and that you can change their lives by helping them out. That's what we want, right? Thanks for watching until the end, guys. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Also, you can support me on Patreon if you want to with a small monthly amount. It really helps me create better videos with better quality. So I'll put a link in the description. All right, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so masculinity, right? I want to go to war. Light. I want to have a lightsaber. I can't do this. I'm 36. This isn't becoming of an old man. This has to stop, guys.